This is iFanboy Pick of the Week number 926, brought to you by iFanboy listeners like you with the ears. You. Hey, this is Josh Flanagan. I am here, thankfully, with my co-host Connor Kilpatrick.
Hello, Josh.
All right, let's get on with this. iFanboy. I'm not in the mood.
Okay.
All right?
That's great.
This is so
I'm looking forward to it then.
I was going to do like a whole bit about, because I'm very tired. Didn't get enough sleep, and I was going to do a whole bit about being cranky. And then just starting to do the show has woken me up.
Sure.
And I was like, I'll be crabby. And then I was like, nope, I'm being cheerful.
Endorphin rush.
It is. Yeah. It's like sense memory. It's like one of the actual positive sense memories I have in my life. Most of them just rush cortisol straight into my bloodstream.
Oh, boy.
This is Pick of the Week number 926. Every week, one of us picks a book they like from the book they like best from their stack of comics. Did you hear me downshift there? I was like, nope, we're going to have to do this at 80%. We call that the Pick of the Week. We will talk about that book. We will talk about other books from the week. There's a patron pick. There's listener mail. If you're not having fun by now, if you're like already not into the vibe, and I hate using the word vibe, but it is correct in this instance, you're not going to like the rest of it, is my guess. Maybe you are. I don't know. There will absolutely be spoilers. I was thinking about it as I was reading this week, and I was like, we're going to have to talk about this, so there's no way around it.
Maybe there's like dour vibe fetishists who listen, who really just like the shows when the vibe is low.
I don't think it ever is. Like, that's always what it is it's a very self-aware vibe. You know what I mean? Like, no one's like, oh man, they're such downers.
It's been a while since we've been cranky.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're fun cranks. You know?
I think so.
Did you just do a mental checklist of everyone in your life? Because I did.
But I like it.
I think I'm the funnest version of my crankiness on this show. How's that?
That sounds fair.
There's a much less fun crankiness, and it existed this morning when my son ate 2 bites of his breakfast and then was on the toilet until I saw the bus coming up the road. And I was like, get up! That was the least fun version of my crankiness.
Let's leave that energy to the side today.
Yeah, I'm going to have to apologize to him when he comes home. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't sleep enough, dude. He's like, I've heard your apologies before. And I was like, I know. He doesn't say it, but he looks at me with it. And I know he knows it. You had the pick.
It's the subtext.
Yeah.
I had the pick. It was a strange week because DC publishes on Tuesdays. And so for DC, it was the 5th week. But no one else, which is very strange, right? Like, you think everyone's on the same page. But for DC, it was the 5th week, so they didn't really put out any normal books. It was all like annuals and specials.
That's very interesting.
You had a sort of a regular but lightish Marvel week. The indie stuff was actually rather light for me, but DC was non-existent. So I had only 10 or 11 books. I ended up reading a couple of extras. But at the end of it, as Josh well knows, because I wouldn't stop texting him about it, I had no pick of the week. I had nothing. I didn't know what to do. I read a couple extra books. Those didn't do anything for me. And I was really concerned. But, this is the gig, right? This is the podcasting game. We got into it, and we know what we have to do. So the pick week is X-Men 34 by Jerry Duggan, Joshua Cassara, Romulo Fajardo Jr., and Clayton Cowles. And it ends up because it was the book that I enjoyed the most. It was the most fun, and it had some emotional resonance. As we're coming to the end of this Krakoa era, you and I have been enjoying it. You've been in and out. I've been there the whole time, at least on the main books.
I haven't been out. I've been reading the books that I've been reading.
Right, but you weren't reading consistently for the last 3 or 4 years.
Sorry. I was conflating Krakoa era with Hellfire Gala.
That's all Krakoa era.
Right. Well, that's when I got in. Everything before that, whatever. You're right.
We're coming near the close, and it's a final battle with Orcus, the organization that basically turned the whole world against the mutants and exiled them from the planet, with partial help of Professor Xavier, and that's what this issue is all about. It is about what happens when the kids realize they got to kill the father because the father has lost his way. And so the mutants that didn't leave the planet, the resistance force, at least some of them have realized that Professor Xavier's got to die, and it's going to fall to Kitty Pryde, or Catherine Pryde, in her Shadow Cat identity as the only one willing to do the deed. And I thought that was an interesting sort of bookend to, she starts off decades ago, joins the team as a teenager. She's sort of the fun mascot character. And, what does everyone know her for? At least everyone in comics, the non-X-Men readers, is Professor Xavier is a jerk, right? The teenage reaction to that, because he's the father figure. And I thought having her be the one that's like, I've got to do it, is sort of an interesting thematic pairing to that moment. Of all the people, the one who famously called him a jerk is the one that says she's going to have to kill him. Who knows if it's actually going to happen or not. And I thought, the moment towards the end where she's like thinking she's all alone in this mission, and then there's an off-panel dialogue balloon, and we turn the page, and it's Wolverine, Logan, standing half shadowed in the alleyway. First of all, I thought that was a terrific panel. And he's like, I'll help you. I was like, whoa. It was I thought, a nice emotional moment for the two of them because they have a long-standing relationship. And I thought that was really balanced very well against more comedic elements of Kamala Khan and Sink and the other Wolverine fighting MODOK, which I thought was, funny and slapsticky. So it was an interesting tonal issue where it was funny, but it was also sort of emotionally heavy. And I thought that it was one of the things that Jerry Duggan does really well. And I thought this was a terrific issue.
I thought that the bit where Logan shows up and she's having her little crisis of consciousness. I don't know who Caliban is. I recognize the name, but I don't know anything about it. I liked that through, what is this, 3 pages? 4 pages. She basically goes through the mental checklist of what it meant for her to be, I'm going to say Kitty, versus Shadowcat. Mm-hmm. And like she, says like, well, I really, I had to shut this off. I don't remember what the words were, but it was, I have to shut this off so that I can do this job. And I thought I could, but I can't. And it was just like this little, because the whole time you're kind of watching her like she goes feral, more or less. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because real people don't do that, really. Mm-hmm. It's a thing you can say in a comic book, and they're kind of just addressing it here, which I kind of liked, which means that it's very conscious. And obviously, if you can do that, you're a bit of a psychopath.
Right.
Which really actually goes a long way to sort of explain the kind of special relationship, quote unquote, that she has with Wolverine. Mm-hmm. Because he's like that, because he is somewhat animalistic. And so maybe that's a more natural version of the word psychopath. Either way, I like when he comes in. I like that relationship. I like that you sort of see her humanity, her real character a little bit, because we haven't for a while. It was just like, let's make this fun ninja assassin Kitty Pryde for a while, which, from a realistic personality standpoint, doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's awful good in an action series. It's Liam Neeson. She turns it off and kills some stuff.
She's almost a cipher because... for a while we had ship captain Kitty Pryde. Mm-hmm. And then previous to that, years before, we had like school administrator Kitty Pryde. It's whatever role they need, Kitty Pryde fills it. But the thing is, her character is strong enough that you kind of buy it. You're like, okay, I get it. She's that.
Pointing it out like that, though, really makes me start. I mean, it's you don't want to get into it, but, it's a bunch of dudes and they're like, we need a person to do this. And like they take this really well-established and, beloved character, and they're just like, well, set her in this role. And I was like, wow, it's actually, there's something going on there. I can't quite figure out. There's a lot of nascent psychotherapy in the middle of these comic books. And I think it's what keeps people coming back to it. I thought that, and also just finally, as a final page, the Wolverine standing there, and he took her sword. When he takes her sword, that to me was like, I'll take care of this. Like, you don't have to deal with it. But I really like that as a metaphorical and literal handoff of I've got this role back now. I haven't been here for some reason the whole time.
Well, there's the other Wolverine.
I was in this alley. I'll tell you, I like the other Wolverine.
Laura's a great character.
I really do.
Stupid. She's also called Wolverine, just like it's stupid.
But it's fine because she actually is. She's filling in the role of Wolverine before all of that baggage and shit was placed on him. Mm-hmm. And so she just like, point me at the things to kill, and she can just be that.
I love her. I think she's a great character.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Which I kind of realized later. I think it was probably after Avengers Academy and whatever. But she shows up and people have a lot of fun writing her, and she's pretty great. And because I can tell it's her and not Logan, so I don't really get like confused or anything. Sometimes if they're both look the same. Anyway, and then finally, I just wanted that last page, though. The art is beautiful, for one thing. Yes. Rain, lightning, neon signs. He's backlit. It's a very stationary pose, and it's like right in the middle of the page. And I like his short, thick torso.
Well, he's slightly more squat here, right? If you look at 2 pages previous, Kitty and Logan are talking in a profile shot, and they're the same height.
Yeah.
She's not portrayed as someone who's super tall. So, he was short guy until 2000, until the movies, and they made him taller and more handsome. And this version, at least in this issue, he looks slightly more like the old Logan.
And then finally, as we go in that page, it's a 1-panel page. It's a splash page. But the way that the lettering and all of like the lightning, it leads you from the top left to the bottom right. And if you see there's actually sequential storytelling in here in one panel, whatever you need, stand down. I've got the only help he needs, claw, snicked right here. Like it's really cool. Like they
Very well
made
done.
a single panel page into a bit of storytelling. It was beautiful. It really, I mean, this is like the kind of thing I would have never known this, 5 years, 10 years ago. But now I'm seeing it. I don't even know if they intended it, but it's that sort of skill.
It's got to be. Look where the snicked is. I mean, I realize they put it next to the claws, but it's in between him and the dialogue balloon, so you have to read the snicked first.
But like, who decided to put that last word balloon? You know what I mean? Like where those things fall is somewhere in the design. And I assume, like whoever laid out the page, and then got with a letter and like, it should go like this. It could have been in the script. It's great that it happened is my point, really. This page was probably my favorite page of the week. Second favorite page of the week, actually.
It was good. And I also really liked the panel. So on page 21, where you turn the page and you see that is Logan in the alley. He's sort of in a triangle shadow and, there's the lights behind him. I think it's just a very good drawing. Joshua Cassara is this good comic artist, very solid, but there are some terrific panels in here. Especially the comedic ones with Kamala Khan. There's the one where she saves the woman in the car and punches the two guys out the windows with her Mr. Fantastic powers. That was funny. And then there's the one later on where she's karate chopping MODOK in the face in the background of the panel. There's some very good work in this issue, particularly.
And I think that he's doing his research.
Yeah.
He's, looking at great art and incorporating it and putting it in here. This is top quality storytelling and drawing. It's a beautiful comic book.
What I thought was interesting is, and they sort of call it out here, they do call it out, where Sync and X-23, Laura, Wolverine, who had that relationship in the other, version of them in that when they were trapped. I don't know if you read that issue or not.
Nope.
She's in the background comedically chopping MODOK in the face, and he's like, we need to protect her. We need her to help us, keep us in the light. And she's such a not X-Men character, Kamala Khan. Her vibe, God damn it. Her whole aesthetic, her whole personality is not an X-Men character. She's not dour. She's not over serious. She's the opposite of the X-Men.
She's Kitty Pryde before she got all dark.
Right. And I think in that sense, it makes her the perfect addition to the X-Men because she's such a counterpoint to, they're constantly at the edge of disaster. It's just a really smart addition for whatever dumb corporate reasons they added her. It doesn't matter. The execution of it really adds an interesting element to everything. So I'm enjoying it.
And that's the game. If you're the writers and the editors, it's like, all right, we have to do this. Let's make it work. And I think, A, we're really good. It's smart that Duggan put that in there.
Yeah.
And then B, that you picked up on it exactly. I think that illustrates it really well. Before we get going, I don't know. I hate, it has to happen. I think I'm supposed to hate it.
Yeah.
But Charles Xavier as the big bad, it just, it bothers me.
It's been done. Yeah.
That's not, it's just, at the end of it, like if it all stems from him, I don't know why. I think it's because they're superhero fantasies, really. And so you don't want to see the good guy turn into the bad guy. And you don't mind going the other way, taking Magneto from being the big bad guy to sort of being the sort of ambiguous good guy. That kind of works. Like because you want redemption, but watching like the father fall, like it's very hard to add those pieces up. But then again, narratively, kill your babies, torture the people in there. Like it all makes sense, but it really bothers me. But it's supposed to.
Yeah, I don't love it.
I don't even care about the character. And it bothers me.
So this week we also had the start of a new, I guess, event, Blood Hunt #1 from Jed MacKay, Pepe Larraz. Blood Hunt arriving with zero fanfare and excitement. I mean, I wouldn't call it a full-fledged event. It's more like a mini Jed MacKay event where all of the characters he is currently writing or has written in the past, although strangely, I was sure we'd see Black Cat in here. Not her, but like the Avengers who's currently writing and the characters from Moon Knight, which he's currently writing, and then also Doctor Strange and Cleo, who he wrote before, or that book's over, right?
No.
Is that still happening? It's still happening. Yeah. It's like all the books he's currently writing are coming together in this mini Jed MacKay event.
Brief aside.
Yep.
This is a thing now. A person writes a bunch of different books and they slowly start to cross-pollinate, and then there's a thing where they're all together. I think Bendis was maybe the first person that I remember doing that. And then it's happened a few other times. Does this go further back in history than that?
It might. I don't know. I can't think
I feel like it's definitely like a or more modern thing, which is kind of a really interesting sort of author power move. Like if you're in this corporate company and you're writing these different books and sort of be able to entangle them all. Like I did all these characters. I'd like to do an event based around the characters that I've been writing solely. And they're like, go for it. And I kind of respect that.
Yeah, so I would call this more of a crossover than an event. Crossover and events are like squares and rhombuses, like What is a crossover, what is an event. This just seems like more of a crossover of a bunch of his books than it is an event, but it doesn't matter, whatever you want to call it. I was mostly interested because of, I like Jed MacKay quite a bit, but I love Pepe Larraz, so I was interested in that sense. I was not overly interested in the vampire element of it, partially because I feel like we just did this, we talked about this before, and the Avengers had a whole vampire storyline. The vampires have been the background villains in the Moon Knight book forever. It's just not, for me, overly compelling, but I'm reading. It's only a 5-issue story, at least in the main book, so I'll probably read the whole thing. This was fine. Most of the books I read this week were fine, and this wasn't fine. There were things about it I liked, there were things about it I didn't like, but it looked really good, and that was probably the best thing I could say about it.
I would say that my instinct when I hear like this is a vampire thing is to go, eh. I do have to differentiate between Vertigo vampires and Marvel vampires.
Right.
Marvel vampires aren't really about the whole vampire thing as much as they're just another sort of subfamily in Marvel.
They're just another superhero group or another villain group.
Yeah. So I wasn't really looking forward to it, but at the same time, I'm reading almost all these Jed MacKay books. I'm not reading Moon Knight, but I get it. Like I know Hunter's Moon is the guy now. Did he do All Hallows? No, All Hallows. That's the other. They're kind of weird names to say. Now they're just putting 2 words together. They're out of single word names. And as I was reading it, I was very impressed with the structure, the setup, the building blocks of it. I was like, wow, you're really taking all of your things in the different books. And I'm wondering like how much of that was planned and how much of that sort of came up as they were going along. And it was beautiful. And I was pretty compelled because I read Blade also. And this sort of, I think this is related to that.
Right. So that's the spoiler we're going to have to talk about.
Yeah.
So the big twist on the final page here is that Blade is the bad guy in charge of the vampires. He's turned. At least that's the first issue twist.
He took on all of Dracula's powers in the miniseries he was just in. And so like he sort of tapped into the good and the bad to have enough power to defeat that big bad.
Do you think that when he was sitting at the end of that series contemplating the universe, he was contemplating turning bad?
It's interesting. I'll see where it goes. I mean, I figured about halfway through that I was like, oh, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
If I hadn't read that other series, I wouldn't have thought that.
Okay.
Like I would have thought when they when they transported the truck in there, then there was some trick. But when he went into Strange's place, I was like, ooh. And I was also like, really? You're still wearing those glasses? Those are from the mid-90s. You're dressed exactly like Wesley Snipes was in 96.
I have some really horrible 90s sunglasses on all my college graduation photos, and I wish I could burn them.
Me too.
But same. Blade owns it.
It's true. I mean, like, it's his thing. You can't take it away from him. Here's the things that I didn't love. The setup here is basically exactly the same as the Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Some people show up that we've never heard of before, and they take the Avengers apart one by one. He created, like, 5 new vampire Delta Force characters.
See, I hated the design of those characters so much. I thought they were the characters from the Avengers arc that started off his book. Because I feel like ever since that Avengers movie, the second one or the third one, which one had the bad guys that showed
Ebony
up?
Maw, that one.
I feel like ever since those characters, all of their villains look and recall those characters.
And those are all from Hickman's Avengers run. That's
right. I'm just saying they all sort of
that's
have a
similar
design
starts.
aesthetic.
Yes.
There's nothing about them that's compelling visually or memorable visually, so I don't remember who they are. And so these guys show up. I was like, wait, are these the guys from that stupid arc that opened Avengers up? And I'm like, I guess not, but they look the same. Like, it's just this.
It's not one of my favorite parts of Jed MacKay's over.
Yeah.
Is this. He's done this a couple of times, and they're very like, here's some people who are designed exactly to take out the people who are on the Avengers team at the moment.
Memorable? Electro. That guy, you remember him? He shows up, you know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
These people all look vaguely sort of Roman gods and combined with like...
They all remind me of Sandman characters.
Yeah.
Like they're like
Vertigo.
They're all different versions of the Endless is sort of what those actually all go back to. Anyway, that worked. They picked apart the Avengers bit by bit. Exact same thing that happened in the Avengers run. But it's well done. I wasn't like, oh, this sucks. But I recognize the pattern. And I don't want to recognize the pattern because then I can put everything else together. Fine. Last bit is that, and I can't believe I'm going to harp on this, but it happened in the last Avengers issue I noticed, and it happened here, is that they're referring to Sam as Captain America.
Okay, so I had the same note, and I was going to bring that up next.
Okay, remember we were in the Avengers issue, we had Triathlon last week, and he says, there's 2 of them, and then somebody yells, it's Captain America, and I was like, did they bring Steve too?
Right.
I really thought that, because then they showed Sam, and I went, oh, Sam is Captain America. Now, the problem is that I love Sam, but when I see him, I go, that's Sam, that's Falcon.
Yep.
There's very little about him that has turned him into Captain America other than them constantly telling me that he is a symbol.
Well, that's the thing, is that really annoyed me by this issue. And I'm going to reiterate what you just said. We are a Falcon-loving show. We love Sam. We love the Falcon. He
For
is terrible as Captain America, especially when there's another Captain America running around. It's not like when Bucky
Right.
took over 20 years ago and then Steve came back and Bucky's like, oh, I'm just going to stay Cap. It was like, no, there is only one Captain America. And at one point, one of these guys says, we're going to turn you into a vampire. And since you're the icon, it's going to devastate the world. I was like, I don't think that's the case. I think if you turn Steve Rogers into a vampire, that might devastate the world.
It's very odd to me that it's very nice and patriotic of it, but the leader of a African nation is going to refer to Captain America as the symbol of the world. I was like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know.
But again, Steve has earned that. Steve earned it. And that would make sense.
And it's outside of just the national thing. You know, like he's the version of what is best. And Sam is not worse. He's just not that thing. It's not what he has been forever. He's a different kind of character. Fine. And then the last thing that happened was that Sam was saved in this. He did not get himself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I'm going to fight. And they're like, get him out of here. And you wouldn't ever do that to Steve Rogers.
Mm-mm.
Steve Rogers makes the choice and gets himself in and out of it. I thought that was a weak position for that character.
You kind of can, like, I guess, make it work in your head in the regular Avengers book, but it just doesn't make any sense that Steve Rogers would not be involved in this storyline.
Because he's running around.
Right. He's out in the world being Captain America also.
In the movies, in the TV show, I'm actually fine with it because
that's a different
Steve
situation.
Rogers.
It's a different medium. Right. You have to deal with the real world considerations of Chris Evans not wanting to do it anymore. So I'm totally cool with it in the movies. But here, you can draw Steve Rogers forever. He's never going to want more money or want to do different things. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that Steve would not be involved in this. And it's just dumb. And it's one of the worst parts of the Marvel synergy in the movies. But I'm reading this. I thought it was fine. I'm looking forward to reading more. I'm always happy to see more Pepe Larraz, who's incredibly dynamic, one of the best new artists that's come around in 10 years.
Also, his name has a fun musicality. Pepe Larraz. All of that. So, like, I actually had fun reading it. I liked it a lot more than I didn't, and I kind of didn't know what to expect. But I know that, like, Jed McKay's he's a fine writer. He's a little by the numbers in this one, but it's fun. It's exciting. It's compelling. You know, the last page, you know, it made me want to read what was coming next.
They really just fuck with Stephen Strange. I mean, he just can't catch a break, that dude.
I got to say, though, he has had maybe the best sort of comeback of a character over the last couple of decades, and also just being very consistently depicted. You know, Stephen Strange is Stephen Strange. You know, it takes on the voice of the writer, you know, a little bit here and there. But for the most part, he's got his same gravitas, his little bit of arrogance, his, you know, but his wisdom, you know, lessons learned kind of things. I think that whole him as a general, I think it was a great addition to sort of check his ambition and his arrogance and, you know, put that in the background, but not really change the character that much. Like, he knows how powerful he is and what he's capable of, and he's doing his best. I don't even mind Clea. Like, a lot of times you put a spouse character along with somebody, it depletes it. I think she fits in really well. It's been fun, and because there's a contrast there.
I'm going to read most of these books in the checklist because I've been reading most of them anyway. As long as it's fun, I'll be into it. Let's talk about Superman House of Brainiac Special #1, which featured 3 stories related at least somewhat to the House of Brainiac story that's going through Superman books right now, which is its own mini crossover.
What did you think of this?
I thought it was totally innocuous. I thought there was interesting things that happened in it. I think Brainiac is a good character. I think the sort of creepy makeover he's had over the last couple decades into this like all-knowing, all-seeing cosmic threat is interesting. I actually did find learning about Zarnia, you know, somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
I thought the middle story by Mark Russell and Steve Pugh was weird. I don't know that Perry White, the hardened, grizzled editor of the paper, would be this naive about politics. I didn't buy that at all. I realize he's a stand-in for our current political situation, but it was just a bizarre way to take this character. So that in that sense, it was.
Is that happening? That's actually happening in the other books. That's why
he's running for mayor in the other book. That's why Lois is in charge. Yeah. And then the last story, it was Amanda Waller and fucking Peacemaker. I basically tuned that out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I thought that the Zarnia story, I don't know anything about Zarnia. So I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting how they set this up and where it's interesting. They created a utopia. Nobody could die, so it kind of turned into bedlam. I was like, that's kind of interesting. That's where this character comes from. I get that. That makes sense. Second story, your comments about Perry White notwithstanding, I loved this story.
Mm.
Because Mark Russell and Steve Pugh, longtime listeners will recognize as the team from Flintstones. I'm saying it out loud, even Even Strange now, but it's a legendary book. It is, Mark Russell's entrance to the stage. It is a book that was so much more than it should have been. And we've been watching the different versions of Mark Russell sort of float throughout stuff. So that's who they are. And at first it starts as sort of a very on-the-nose critique of politics today. In this, immigrants are swapped with aliens who live in Metropolis, and they're going to take our jobs, and there's protest. And basically Perry White, from a morality standpoint, this all sort of works, that he's like, we can't let this happen because it's wrong. Information matters, truth matters, blah, blah, blah. But at the middle of it is Bibbo, who is, for the first time in his life, he's campaigning. He's campaigning for Perry White, and his bar is campaign headquarters before noon. And then after that, it's the bar. And you sort of see these tensioning situations where people are showing up for the right-wing candidate, Garen Blake. And, he's like, we got to get these aliens out of here. There's shots of a kid. They freak out. There's like riots. And we go back and we see Bibbo's history. And he's like, the thing about the neighborhood is all the different people. And that's what makes it great. You go through the whole thing and, it is sort of on the nose, but I thought it was pretty well done. And then I really thought that what nailed it at the end is there's a beat at the end. And there's this character who you have seen sort of in the background of everything the whole time on the side of the anti-alien people. And he sits down and he's like, what happened to the girl? It wasn't right. I don't know what's right. I'm not saying I've changed my mind, that I'm okay with all the aliens. And then he says the line, I just know what I don't want to be. And I was like, God, that's so good. Because it was like a West Wing moment. To me, it was just like, all right, let's get through all this stuff and find a human in these sets of ideals. And I know that this is fictionalized and everything, but it gave me a feeling. And I really, I was like, that's a wonderful sort of long form short story. And, at the end of it, it's totally, I think it's like a liberalized fantasy of like, if we can just be nice to these people, then we'll all find something in common, which I don't know if that happens in real life, but in here it does. And it makes me feel kind of good just for a minute. Mm-hmm. And, really expertly sort of drawn by Steve Pugh, who excels at it. Great Bibbo story. Sometimes people overdo it. Sometimes, they just lean into his dialect and just sort of do that too much. But I thought that it's set up, it sort of explains some of what that character is like and why he's, right, the way he is, why he really does respect Superman. And I don't know. I really enjoyed that story. That would have been my pick of the week because of that story.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I don't remember anything about the Amanda Waller story, except that at the end, I kind of was like, all right, at least I kind of understand who Amanda Waller is now.
Do you?
No, for this. Okay. In this context of this story, I understand her motivation as we need her in this. I think Fico Ossio is a great artist, too. I also kind of understood, it's not about understanding the larger, like who is Brainiac or who is Amanda Waller, but for this story, in this production, what are these characters and their motivation? And I have that now. So that's helpful because a lot of times I don't understand her motivation. I don't really know what her
right. And we are heading towards the DC event that she is the big bad for. So they got to at least know what's going on.
Yeah, I think the thing that ultimately gets me about her is that she shouldn't be the big bad to me.
Right.
I don't think she's supposed to be a bad guy.
She's the one on the wall.
Right.
She's the wall.
Yeah. And you have to make hard choices and do what you need to be done. But like ultimately, she's not about gaining. I wouldn't think she's not about getting. This is how I would do it, I guess. She's not about gaining power for herself or self-aggrandizement. She's doing the hard things that she has to do to keep the world safe as she sees it. Mm-hmm. And that is different than a narcissist. That's Maria Hill.
That's what she's doing now. It's the whole super beings are too dangerous for this world, so we have to get rid of them. That's her whole thing.
I get that. Like that makes sense as a thing. As opposed to is it Peter Henry Gyrich? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, he's more evil than she is.
Right, because his thing is based on bigotry. Whereas her thing is based on this is not working out for us. And there's an argument to be made for that in this fictional world. Hey, do you like this program? Do you like the things we do? Well, some people do. And I appreciate that because they've gone to patreon.com/iFanboy and they ponied up. They said, I dig this show. I want to help support it. I want to keep it going. I appreciate the work that these guys do. And we appreciate that. If you are able to do that or would like to do that, then please, we welcome you and we are extremely grateful. You can find ways to support the show, unlock shows for everybody. There's a great community on Discord and Facebook. There's a monthly patron hangout, which I really look forward to. If you go with a yearly membership instead of monthly, it's 10% less. There's tier exclusive merch depending on what level you sign up for. At this point, you've heard of crowdfunding and you know how Patreon works. There's different levels, things like that. $5 or higher, you get a patron power and access to the Discord server. $10 higher, an ad-free version of the show. Why you wouldn't want to listen to our ads, I don't know, because I think they're some of the best in the business. Wink. Find out more at patreon.com/iFanboy. iFanboy.threadless.com, where there's a merch store. There are 13 designs on shirts and more, all sorts of stuff over there. Check it out. I think it's really cool. If you like something over there, there's all sorts of things you can put it on. If you're not into wearing a shirt that has some really vague, cryptic joke on it that you barely understand yourself, put it on a mug. And then it's a little easier. iFanboy.com/support. There's a PayPal link there for direct donations. Finally, not quite finally, second to finally, iFanboy.com/Amazon. There's a general shopping link for Amazon. It's an affiliate link, so we get a piece of that. It doesn't cost you anymore. Where it makes sense to use that link on the site, we do. And then finally, bookshop.org is a way to aggregate independent booksellers to purchase your books. You'll find those links on the website where appropriate, and they support some of the lifeblood of our culture.
You could pre-order Polistan, the new Neil Stephenson book that just was announced this week, which comes out in October. You can do that on bookshop.org.
Is it really a book at less than 400 pages?
I don't know. It's part 1 of Bomb Light, whatever that is. I don't know what's happening.
Is it the prologue? Is it?
I don't know.
It sounds to me like a novella.
I'm not reading anything about it. I'm not reading the description of the plot.
No.
I don't want to know anything, but it's just like, what does that mean? And why is it so short? And what's going on? And he hasn't done a multi-story, an official one, like, Reamd and Fall were in the same world, but he hasn't done like an official trilogy since the Diamond Age?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I just...
Not the Diamond Age. The Diamond Age is his own book. You're thinking of the Baroque trilogy.
Baroque trilogy. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Well, technically it's not a trilogy. It was a bunch of smaller parts that were made into a trilogy for publishing concerns.
Right. Well, I want,
I think it's 9 stories. Anyway, yeah, we can't.
3 books, though. 3 published books.
Right. But that wasn't really his call, as I understand it. I could be wrong. It doesn't matter. I read them as 3 books. I'm just being pedantic, and I don't even want to be.
Let's move on to Crave from Maria Lovett and Image Comics. This is issue 6, the final issue. And I went back and forth on whether or not this ended too quickly or not. And I think I've changed my mind. Originally, I thought, well, that wrapped up rather fast. But then I thought, as a short story, though, I thought it worked well. I was happy this was published. It's very unlike Image Comics, this kind of book. Very much unlike most major publishers. It's sort of a straight up, I guess thriller is the right word, but like sexual thriller, erotica thriller, not, the kind of thing Image normally does that doesn't involve superheroes or sci-fi or fantasy. I liked it a lot. I really liked it. I think Maria Lovett's really talented. The art's terrific. She's got another book coming out. It looks like it's vampires. I'm not super thrilled about that, but I'll check it out based on the strength of this. So I ended up liking it quite a bit. I thought the ending, which was like a daisy chain of desire, meaning like Charlotte wanted John, this other girl wanted Charlotte, and this other girl wanted the other girl. Like, I thought that was an interesting way to end it, because this book was all about unrequited desire, and so it ends with showing that nothing has changed. It's still like this daisy chain of people who want someone else but can't have them.
I lost the thread a little bit in that I was like, I don't remember who by the end. Too many of the people were shaped exactly the same, and I kind of was like, wait, is the blonde one or the... I don't think it needed to be lit any longer for sure. I think maybe as it sort of ended, I don't know that there was quite enough meat on the bone, but I think I just kind of lost the thread at some point. Beautiful. I don't know if it's a freshman effort, but as far as I know, it is, in the world of comic books. So it'll be interesting. I think we've already seen, there's another book coming out, but we've already seen a Lovett variant cover on a couple of books, and it stood out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this young career.
I saw Space Ghost #1, and I saw that it was like a serious, gritty take on Space Ghost, and I went, nope. Not doing that in my life.
But wasn't Space Ghost serious?
Maybe at one point, but never in my life. The first time I saw Space Ghost was like the, wacky races, and that was even before Space Ghost Coast to Coast. To me, he's always been a parody comedic character since the 70s. So,
well, the original, I think it was a cartoon, it was Alex Toth design, one of the finest designs of all time.
Yep.
Just like round off every edge of Batman and just make it, perfect looking. And I think the original Space Ghost cartoon, I don't think it was a comic book, it was
a cartoon.
Like sci-fi. It wasn't funny. And so I just was interested in seeing what it was like. David Pepose, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Lau on art, Andrew Dalhouse on colors, and Taylor Esposito. It was fine. It was very Lost in Space action, blow up stuff. To me, I'm kind of interested just to see how they do it, because right away Brack is in this, and I know Brack as one of the silliest and funniest things I've ever seen and heard in my life.
Mhm.
And in this, like, he's serious, but every once in a while the words would kind of make me think of the cartoon version. And I wasn't like looking for a great comic book. I was curious to see how they did it. And I think it was competent. It wasn't like, this is amazing. I will probably read the next one. I enjoyed it enough. I'm curious. I want to know how they're going to handle it. But if like I missed an issue and forgot, I'd be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Did he sing about bologna sandwiches at all?
Nope.
Did he scat?
No.
What's the point of any of this?
I was, lost in space.
So one of the books I read when I was desperate to find something that was great was Harley Quinn 2024 Annual #1, because people were talking about it. And it was Erica Henderson on the story and the art, and she's really talented. It was a story about Harley Quinn who pulls a job. So it's sort of a villainy Harley Quinn, because that's part of the reason why I don't read the books anymore, because I hate her as a hero. She was sort of villainy. She pulls a job, a heist with some people, and they do it disguised, and they don't get caught. He's like, see what happens when you don't pull a job where everyone can see you, then you can get away with it. So she takes a cruise to get out of town for a while. Turns out Zatanna is the on-cruise entertainment, which I don't think Zatanna is that low on the pecking order that she's doing cruises. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Turns out there's a murder on board. Zatanna and Harley Quinn have to work together to solve the murder. And the story was fine. The art was terrific. I think Erica Henderson's a really great cartoonist, but I just wasn't that engaged in the story. But I enjoyed the art. It looked good, but the story didn't do much for me.
I didn't read it.
Yeah, it's fine. So those are the books we wanted to talk about. It was a really small week for me, at least. There wasn't a lot of books, but at patreon.com/iFanboy, every patron to the show gets a book. Those words don't make sense together in that order. Every patron of the show gets to vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, the overwhelming favorite was Get Fury #1 from Marvel's Max line, written by Garth Ennis, drawn by Jason Burrows, inks by Guillermo Ortega, and colors by Nolan Woodward, letters by Rob Steen. If you'd asked me, Josh, going into the week, what I thought the pick of the week was going to be, I would have told you Get Fury.
My main question coming into this show was, why wasn't that pick of the week?
It felt very much like, this is something we say a lot, it felt very much like a cold open. Like, not a lot really happened, really. I don't remember the name of the one they're talking about, the previous story that involved them, but, sort of a sequel to what Garth's done before. And this is the best stuff that he does, right? Like, these days. He has, like, these horror books he does that don't really do a ton for me. He occasionally does a crime book, which I feel like is just him on autopilot. But his best work consistently over the last couple of years has been these Marvel war books starring either Punisher or Nick Fury or both. Mm-hmm. It's Vietnam. Punisher gets a mission. He's got to go kill Nick Fury because Nick Fury's been captured by the North Vietnamese, and he knows too much as a CIA super spy. He has too much information. They're afraid they're eventually going to break Fury and get all that information. So Punisher's secret mission is to go track him down, not rescue him, but kill him. And that's basically all really happens in this issue is he gets his orders. We see Fury in captivity. There's a really horrific ending. But for the most part, it was just, a good chunk of the book was just a big mission briefing. And so it wasn't like a lot happened that was really overly compelling. But I am excited for the rest of it.
I know what you're saying about it being sort of an opening act, but I did think that it did a really good job of bringing me up to speed. Because it sort of started and I was like, all right, this is kind of all familiar. And that first guy showed up, Jop. And that's kind of familiar. And then by the end of it, I was in place. It was so much better. Not everybody can get away with this, by the way, because you do not want an issue that's sort of a recap of everything that's happened before. But this one, I would give it the exception, and it's going to let me enjoy what comes after better. Because I don't know when those last ones came out. I forgot that Fury and Castle were in them together. If they had just gotten into it, I think I would have enjoyed it less. So as I was reading through it, I was like, this is a very enjoyable refresher without me having to go back and pick up those other things and also sort of set up where we are. So you're not wrong about that, but at the end of the day, I liked spending time in this world. It got me thinking a lot about the Garth Ennis who I fell in love with and the Garth Ennis who is here now. And like, I don't know if it's a personal thing or if it's a market thing or probably some combination of like, the guy who does a 50, 60 issue story, is he done now?
The market's done with that.
I get it. But at some point, like this guy has stories in him. He's not that old and this is what he gets to do or wants to do. I don't know, but it's like an adjustment because I read this and there's something I really love about it. And it's very related to the thing that I really love about Preacher, Hitman, etc. But it is a different set of muscles. But then as he sort of gets going in this, the one thing is that for whatever reason, and I would love to have a conversation with him about this someday, when you get to these tough guy war people and soldiers, like he does it so well. That clipped speech, that cut to the point, that glib, detached.
The stoic heroism.
Yeah. It's so good. And it is one of those things where, like, I can write. I'm not talking about like my being able to do something, but I understand how you write glib, sarcastic characters or people who are in over their heads. We see a lot of this because it's just comic book writers talking to you, the reader. But Garth Ennis's thing, Rick Rucka does this too. It's really like a power fantasy of what if you were this kind of person.
Right.
And not a lot of people do that really well. Like great military stories tend to have these kinds of characters. And I don't think they'd be really enjoyable to be around in real life. But in this format, it's really something to me because it's really getting in a different headspace. And I think that he does it better than anybody ever has in comic books and probably ever will. And I don't think there's a huge audience for it. But every time it shows up, I don't get sick of it because it's just so well done. Yep. There's a bit in here where Fury and his two guys have been taken by bandits, basically, and then they're sold to the VC. And they're marching them to the northern capital, which I don't remember. They said they can't go. I don't remember. It is Vietnam in this, right? It's not like...
This is Vietnam, yep.
Right, okay. Not the Marvel version of it.
But they were in camp... No, not that weirdo Marvel... No, this is Vietnam. They were in Cambodia, I think, actually.
And so the one guy falls down. It's just war. These are just war stories. You can read these stories from the Roman army. You can read them from World War II and everything in between. The one guy falls down and can't get up. And the bad guys are yelling at him. They're going to shoot him, and they end up burying him alive, which is a thing that happened. See, you can read it like that in the form. When I say it out loud, I was like, oh, that's fucking horrific. And so there's three prisoners. The other guy, not Fury, starts yelling at them. Like, what monster? Stop it. Well, he's a man, whatever. And Nick Fury is basically saying to him, you have to stop. I'm the only one they want. You are not valuable. They will kill you if you do this. What's done is done. We can't do it. Like, it's very different than the sort of no man left behind valor that gets told in fictional stories. I mean, either way, I mean, whether if he's special forces or just a real soldier, Frank Castle is going to make these kind of stories, and he's a straight up Marine. The point is, like, that attitude, that ideological framework of how you survive in a situation like this. You just get the sense that, like, Garth Ennis has read 1,000 books on this, and like he's gotten into the minds of those people. So when he puts it, or different people in different situations. And I'm like, I know his age. I know he's from Northern Ireland. He probably grew up in some fucking shit, and it's just all fascinating. But at the end of the day, it's incredibly entertaining and it's incredibly succinct. It's just so effortless and quick to read, not to make. I'm not saying it's easy to make, but there's a coolness to it. I love it. I cannot get enough of it. And Jason Burrows is perfect for these kind of things.
Well, he's very much in the school of Steve Dillon.
Yes.
Slightly more dynamic, but only slightly more, which is not a knock on Steve Dillon. That just wasn't his style. Slightly more Marvel-y, but definitely in the same school, same style school.
Yeah. And Steve Dillon had that rigidity that, for some people would be a weakness, but for him was style.
So, ratings on Get Fury #1 ratings out of 5. I'm giving it a 4. I'm very excited to read more.
4.25. Very excited to read more.
All right, sticking with it we are. Thank you for voting. Patreon.com/iFanboy. But if you give it the $5 or higher level, you get a superpower live on the show, like Kal Lis. Kal Lis's power is Kal always knows when he's being scammed or fished. Catfished, regular fished, any kind of fish you can figure out. Kal knows it. Kal knows when there's a scam going on. Is the True Code a scam? Kal knows it. Any kind of scam, from small innocuous daily scams to big phishing scams.
Here's a very subtle question.
Yeah.
The guy selling the True Code.
Yeah.
He has been told by his company.
But he knows it's bullshit.
Well, no, I was saying, let's say we're not using the True Code is just the thing. He believes it. He's not trying to scam anybody. Maybe higher up in the company, someone's like, we know this is bullshit. But you have been at companies and I have been at companies. Companies don't usually think the thing they're doing is bullshit. They have to think that it is actually valuable, even though maybe deep in their hearts they kind of know it's bullshit, or somebody does. But there's a lot of people who try to sell you things and they really believe what they're saying. And what I'm saying is, if they're not trying to fool you, but ultimately it's no good, is he picking up on that?
Yeah, it's not about the person in front of him. He just knows that ultimately this is a scam.
Okay.
Not saying the person in doing it's hard, but is the one who's scamming. But ultimately he knows this is a scam. There's nothing here. Mm-hmm. You can't scam Kal Lis. You can't con him. You can't flim-flam him. You can't pull the old rickety bones on him.
How about the 1-2?
Can't pull 1-2.
He's staying with 1.
Can't pull any of it. Kal's unscammable. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks for being a patron. So, Josh, we got an email. I'm going to put it under the file of Josh, I told you so.
Uh-oh.
This is what happened when we
You
skipped
really
the
like
email.
that file. That's a big file.
It's a good file. It's my favorite file. It's on top. I told you this would happen. Brad P. wrote in, as a longtime listener and recipient of a superpower years ago, I'm always grounded, according to Ron. I have one question which I think about virtually every episode. You always say we don't have time for emails, or we only have time for one email this week. Why is that exactly? Do you think that we, your faithful audience, is going to bail if your show runs longer than 60 minutes? Highly doubtful. We'll listen for another 60 minutes, as long as it takes. We love listening to you guys. I assume it's just because you've got other stuff to do, but honestly, and please remember I really do love you guys, when you rush to the end of the show or drop the emails, you sound like the people at the DMV who shutter their window abruptly at 5 p.m., even if there's still people in line because they hate their jobs and just want to leave. I'm not saying you owe us more time, but I do feel that if your listeners and subscribers take the time to write, you should spend an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes to respond.
You're kind of saying it.
This is not personal. I've rarely written an email and never expected an answer on the air, so this isn't about me feeling slighted. I just genuinely enjoy hearing this email questions, and it almost always engenders an interesting conversation. It's often one of the most interesting segments of the show. So, come on. Don't be like those nasty clerks who abruptly shove you out the door at closing time. Be the friendly neighborhood store owner who keeps the place open a little longer so we can all finish browsing and make our purchases. Once again, just to be understood, I love you guys. So, I want to acknowledge Brad P's email.
First of all, the people at the DMV, the fact that they make it to closing time is a miracle.
They take way more abuse than we do.
They're civil servants.
Yeah.
They're not there to make everybody happy. They're working a shit job for what essentially amounts to okay benefits. Show up early. Make your appointment on, they're not bad people. I know you feel bad out there, but it's not about you.
I do acknowledge that Brad's email comes from a place of constructive love and not from criticism.
I know.
Not from hate. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Anything I would say here maybe sounds harsher than not. I do have other shit to do. Right now, it's the middle of the day. I shouldn't be doing this right now.
Well, yeah, this is an odd.
No, I know that, but we have to fit the thing in the middle, so we have an allotted time that we can do.
Let's back it up though. Let's back it up. Okay. It's true that there's no external force keeping the show around an hour. No one's making us do that other than ourselves. No one's stopping us from doing a 2-hour, 4-hour, 10-hour show other than we'd probably go broke from the hosting fees. But we decided that's about how we like the show to be, about an hour.
Yes.
It happened fairly quickly. Our first episode was 18 minutes long. I think it took not very long until we got to about an hour. And we decided that was like the amount of time we felt right. Now, when we first started in 2005, most shows, and ours started that way too, was because no one knew what they were doing, was not Pipeline and not Word Balloon, because those are one-person shows. But the shows that were groups of people, it was like turn on your microphone and talk for however long. And, there were shows like Comic Geek Speak that went 2 or 3 hours. We didn't want to do that. Josh and I came from, at the time, from working in television, and our aesthetic was more produced, more polished. Not to say the other shows were bad. Each format has its pluses and minuses. But we wanted to do a show that was more produced. And so we try to hit a time. We don't ever hit it, but we try. We want the show to be about an hour. We want the recurring segments. We want to hit about an hour. It's like when I watch, Stephen Colbert, it's an hour-long show. Sometimes I wish the interview went longer. Sure, but it's not. It's an hour-long show because that's the show we want to make. We want to make a highly edited, highly produced, hour-ish show. Sometimes we go longer. So occasionally I go a little shorter. I'm always aiming for 1 hour flat. We have never hit it other than a handful of times over the years.
I very much like the idea of a framework and a context. You have to work within a thing because otherwise you can spin out of control really quickly. I think from a producing standpoint, you would be maybe not shocked, but I would think you would be shocked at how often Connor, Ron, and myself discuss movie length, all the time. Because when you have an open framework, you don't have to tighten it up. You don't have to get to the point. You don't have to do the thing. And I think we all like that as a thing. We like the time you're spending being valuable.
I also want to say that we really like doing the emails. And it's always one of my favorite things. And we're never happy about skipping emails. And actually, I do want to mention this because I did look this up after he sent this in. So I looked at the last 26 episodes, going back to 900, which is about a half a year's worth of shows. Mm-hmm. Would you like to guess how many of those shows we did not answer emails in?
Not many.
4.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And one of them was the final show of the year, which we never answer emails in, and we always spend that time talking about the stats. So really, it's like 3. Right. So 3 out of 25 shows, we didn't answer email. The rest we did emails in. We've been pretty good about it. It just so happens the last 2 weeks in a row, we didn't do it for various reasons. And then, sometimes we only have time for one email, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. Gone are the days we would do 4 or 5 emails in a show, just because the show is different now. It's sort of grown and changed over the years, where Josh and I spend longer on the books than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
But we always want to at least get one email in because we like it, and we don't discount people writing in. But it's unfortunately that's the flex segment where if we're long, we have to cut it. Again, like a professionally produced talk show, occasionally the third guest gets cut if the first guest goes long. Like it's just
so we should start referring to it as bumping.
We bump the emails.
We should start saying the name of the person, be like, "Oh, we're sorry to so and so. We're gonna see you next week."
But also, I do want to mention this is sort of similar to what Josh mentioned about how there are other things to do that are just as important. Like, normally we're ironically not today, but normally 99 out of 100 times we record the show Thursday night after I'm done with work and after the voting on the Patron Pick is done. And so the thing I'm trying to get to is dinner with my wife, and so that is important. It's not like I'm not shutting the show down so I can go have a drink, or I'm trying to get to dinner with my wife. She's waiting for me to eat. It's like the 2 hours I can spend with her before she falls asleep. So, that is important.
Yes.
The show is also really important. It's one of the most important hours of my week. We talk about it all the time. But then so is spending time with my family.
And it's literally the same thing here. Time frame's a little different, is I have to get down there before she falls asleep so I can spend a little time with her.
Right.
Because I've rushed away from putting the kids to bed and coming up to do the show.
Which we love.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, what we've done is we have these lives that have constraints. And so we've created this thing to fit within that. So when we go outside of that framework, it creates pressure on the other points.
This is not our full-time job anymore. When it was our full-time job, it was a lot easier to do all this stuff. You do it during the workday because it was your job. And we could do the show during the day and not worry about all that stuff. But now it's back to being our part-time job, and we have to fill it in the cracks of our lives. We're not 27 anymore. So we have other things in our lives that are important as well. But that's a sort of beside the point of we always, even when we were in our 20s, we're doing an hour-long produced show. And the other thing, the last point I want to make is, as a listener, you're only getting the final product, which is the finished show. We'll just call it an hour, even though it's always never an hour. But you're getting that hour-long show. To make that hour-long show, we're spending from pre-production, not counting the reading of the books, because that's what it is, but from pre-production to post-production, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into post-production, you're looking at 5 or 6 times the length of the show, all in to get it out. And so for every minute we go over, that increases the time it takes to make the show. So like if the show is X and to make the show is 5X, if you're asking us to add another 20 to 30 minutes to the show, you're now exponentially increasing the amount of time we spend putting it together, because editing takes longer, all the stuff takes longer.
I don't know that I fully agree with that math, but you're not wrong. It's definitely, at the very least, you're doubling.
If an hour-long show takes me 5 hours, now you're asking me to do another 20 or 30 minutes. That's going to take me 8 hours to edit the show.
Yeah.
You get the final product, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. It's like making a movie. You go to watch a movie and it's 2 hours, but it takes them 8-9 months to make that movie. So it's tough. We don't like it. I'm always not happy when we skip the emails, but sometimes it has to happen. And again, it only happened 3-4 times in the last half a year. It just so happens 2 of them were in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, there you go. That's where it is. It's not.
But I appreciate the email, and I do. Again, we don't like doing it. We try not to never do it, but it is what it is.
No one's upset. We're fine. We'll read one of the other ones.
Let's do a silly quick one. Dan C. from New Jersey. When I was a kid, I got excited when Marvel books started to come out bi-monthly in the summer. So in July, we'd get an early October issue and then a late October issue. But other books, like the current Savage Sword of Conan, are also bi-monthly, meaning they come out every 2 months. The dictionary says that both meanings are acceptable, and since this is obviously unacceptable, I appeal to you to decide what the proper usage is within comics. I've been thinking of this question since Acts of Vengeance issues of Fantastic Four. It's a long time. I feel like they used to be called bi-weekly. Like when they came out twice a month, they used to be bi-weekly, and then they became bi-monthly, and then everything became bi-monthly. Now bi-monthly doesn't mean anything anymore.
I think Dan just did my head in. Because I started doing it with everything in the world. And I was like, you're right. None of it makes sense. Bi-monthly is every 2 months.
It should be, but he's right. They use it now in comics as bi-monthly, meaning twice a month, which doesn't make any sense.
That's bi-weekly.
That should be bi-weekly, but they stopped using that phrase. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why.
Well, here's my, it's wrong. They're wrong, and they're forcing you to just accept that they're wrong, and it makes the world very difficult.
It's one of the many weird things about comics, and I kind of love it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate. Yes,
I appreciate that comics is this weird subculture that has its own weird words and phrases and meanings and things that don't make any sense when you really look at them. Why are we calling everything bi-monthly? I don't know. Do comics still come out even twice? A lot of them went back to monthly.
I've really lost track of what books are bi-weekly.
Nothing's bi-weekly anymore.
The Revolution. Well, bi-weekly is every 2 weeks, right?
Right. Nothing comes out that often anymore.
They don't anymore? I thought they were still doing. I feel like some of them are still doing.
I'm sorry. See, now I'm confused.
Oh shit.
But you're right. No, you're right. For a while, everything was biweekly.
Right.
And now only some books are biweekly. Many have gone back to monthly.
Well, so what happens is the biweekly ones feel like they came up too soon, and the bi-monthly one, or no, the monthly one. Jesus, the monthly ones feel like it's been forever.
Right, because our brains got programmed.
All of the instincts are off now. Which, by the way, if you want to know why we keep going, I don't remember what happened in the last issue. This is why. Because the rhythm has been interrupted, and my brain hasn't figured out how to automatically store the information for the correct amount of time.
Correct. And some books change their schedule. They're occasionally biweekly, and then they go to monthly. Like I was reading about the new X-Men books that are coming out, and Tom Brevoort was like, some books will come out 18 times a year, some will come out 12. Sometimes they'll come out quicker than others. Then they'll go back to monthly. I'm like, you can't do that.
Listen, Tom. I talk directly to Tom Brevoort. Tom, you've been an enormous positive impact on my life in ways that I probably couldn't even understand, left and right. But at the same time, fuck off.
You can't do that. Every book should have a set schedule. Help us out, man.
Is this an us problem? Like, this has got to be an us thing. Like, other people are like, what's the problem? And it's just like, we are fighting mental decline.
Calcification.
Yeah, listen, there is such a thing as plasticity. And it is in low supply. And the more that you screw, we have to know what to expect and when to expect it, or things don't make sense.
Right.
I have these slots are available for this thing, and you're jiggering up the schedule.
They did break everything when they changed from monthly to biweekly for almost every book. And then it became like our brains got used to that. And now, as you said, when a book comes out truly monthly, you're just like, wait, what happened 5 years ago when I read the last issue? It's just, there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. But no, you're right. Dan is correct. They shouldn't all be called bi-monthly. It should be bi-weekly and bi-monthly. That is our verdict.
No, like Savage Sword of Conan is
bi-monthly.
Is bi-monthly. Regular comics, I can't believe that I have to specify this. This is for me, not you. Are monthly.
Yeah.
Like they're not by anything.
But then there's the bi-weekly books like Batman or whatever that come every 2 weeks.
Now, what's a Tim Drake book?
Bi-curious.
He's not curious. That's
true. Well, he's a little confused. Bi-confused.
Yeah. I don't think he's the one who's confused.
I don't even know anymore. Remember Tim Drake? Remember how we used to love him? All right, patreon.com.
Okay, no, it's not because of that.
No, not because of his sexuality, because of his confusion.
Yes.
His lack of confidence.
All of it.
His lack of self-awareness and
he recognizes that the corporation has lost touch of what the character is.
Yes.
And then implemented something to try to make it better and instead just muck the whole thing up.
Right. The most self-confident, I'm groping for words, but my brain won't allow it.
See, for example, this is going to make the show longer because we got to figure out how far back to cut out what I just said.
Patreon. I don't even know why I said Patreon. Contact at iFanboy.com. So you can write in like Dan and are they both Dans? Brad and Dan. You can write in like they did, or you can write in for our Mediasplode show. Put Mediasplode in the subject line. Thank you for doing so. So as we mentioned last week, May, which is the month we're in now, is going to be chock full of shows. There's going to be 9 shows maybe in May, all told, all in. We're going to have a Talksplode. We're going to have a special edition review of Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2. We're going to have a Booksplode review of Avengers Kree Skrull War. We're going to have a Mediasplode. No, the last one's not a show. There's going to be 8 shows. And then there's the Patron Hangout. So there's a lot going on this month. I think this coming week is going to be the Booksplode. I believe that's the first one up on the schedule. It might be fluid, but we have to have one this week. I believe it's going to be the Booksplode. We haven't done it yet, but that's the plan. All the regular shows plus a Talksplode, a Booksplode, a Mediasplode, and a special edition show. And then if you're a patron, the Patron Hangout on May 24th. To kick off for Memorial Day weekend. So lots to do. Lots of fun. All at iFanboy HQ. Lots of editing.
While I talk, I'm just going to check in with somebody right now. How's next week looking? Okay. All right, there we go.
You have a plan B?
No, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Listen, it's mostly me. It's not me. It's a little me.
I'm pretty sure you pushed the Talksplode at the end of the month just for that reason.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, where were we? Just that you just saw production happening. You can find our library of nearly 1,400 shows over at iFanboy.com, wherever podcasts are sold. It's a lot. I'm saying a thing. Somebody said something nice to us this week that they had been talking to other people in comics, and he reported back very surprising and flattering things they said about our show and the work we do, and made me feel very good. So thank you. You can follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram to find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out, and sometimes for the best of the week in panels. Connor and I are on Instagram at CSKillPatrick and J.A. Flanagan. Apparently, it used to be a social network. It's not anymore, as far as I know.
It seems like it's a store. And
it's a store with extremely short-form programming mixed in with short-form programmed ads.
Yeah. Everything's terrible.
I can't put it down sometimes, though. It's just interesting enough.
Well, the good news is LinkedIn has added games.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everyone saw the success of the New York Times. The New York Times is now a gaming company. More people go to New York Times to play games and read the news. And so LinkedIn announced this week they're adding their own daily games.
Oh, man. There's the innovation you want to see.
There's no website I hate more. There's not one.
I was like, I thought you loved the New York Times. And then I was
right. LinkedIn.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate it.
I'm actively angry that I have to be on it. And I tell people all the time.
Yeah, I hate it.
I hate it.
It's the most performative, insincere thing.
But I also hate that we have all of this. This is a rant, but I hate that we all decided that we all going to put our professional lives in the hands of a private company. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to make these guys rich to have a job.
Well, it also didn't even work.
Doesn't
work.
Anyway, where are we at? Oh, right. Subscribe to youtube.com/iFanboy. I forgot it was my part of the script.
I'm sorry. I'm in it too.
Thinking about LinkedIn. Subscribe to youtube.com/iFanboy. You'll find our old video shows that we did for many, many years. And you'll find them all there. You can see us all in our younger days, our younger, more beshorted days. We post this show there every week, too. So if you want to listen to this show on YouTube, because that's where you're spending all your time, you can find it there. Also, consider leaving us a review or star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you listen to your podcasts. Also on YouTube, consider, giving us a thumbs up or whatever happens there now. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Also, thanks for listening to this week's show, which we recorded early in the morning because we had a conflict. And so I am just now waking up. I wasn't really awake when the show started. I was sort of on autopilot.
I certainly wasn't. And I got 3 hours on you. So
that was the first time I spoke when you and I said hello when I first logged on. So
that's a very funny way of looking at it.
Yeah. It's like, words are coming out in the right order. Almost all the time.
Seriously, I never got to my grumpy bit this week.
That's fine.
I was going to be tired and surly, and I just...
It's always next week. It's always next week.
It's always when the kids get home.
All right. Well, until then, I'm Connor.
I'm Josh. Thank you for helping me.